Alright, so we're going to work on fixing mistakes in flat brioche in one color. And the first thing we need to do is really understand the anatomy of a brioche stitch so that we can fix it. So first, let's look at what we have just completed, since we can see exactly what's going on with the stitch. So this is the stitch that we slipped from the other side, and you can see that down the column looks like a column of knits. Okay, so that's the slipped one. And then next to it, we have a yarn over and a purl stitch. So this is the yarn over that we created, and also the knit two together, which makes a purl on this side. So if you look closely, that yarn over goes from in front behind that purl stitch, and it kind of holds behind there. Okay, so if you look down the row, you can kind of see the purl bump. Let me try to get it closer. You can see the purl bump in the middle, and then on the side you've got the yarn over that goes behind. As you stretch it, you can kind of see it. So we know that a slipped stitch gives us a column of purls, and that the yarn over and the knit two together gives us a column that looks like a purl stitch bump in the middle of the wavy line, and that the yarn over goes from in front to behind the purl stitch. Okay, so I've made up this swatch and I've made two mistakes, so I'm going to show you two different ways to fix it. One is easier than the other, and one's a little more painful since we'll have to unravel. So down here is a legit mistake that I made, and I'll show you how you can tell the difference. So in this column, you can see that right there, that hole is way too big. You can kind of tell when it's not stretched out that it looks a little funny. So, you can see my finger behind there, and then way too much there. Something is missing from there. And then over here, kind of the same thing, where it's just, there's too much space, right? I feel like those mistakes kind of look similar. You can see a V-stitch, and there's too much space. Well, if you flip it over, your mistake will be obvious. So the mistake I legitimately made down here, there's nothing cluing you in on what's wrong. Up here, we've got this. So this is a mistake I intentionally made, where I knit through just the knit stitch and did not grab the yarn over to knit two together. So this will be able to fix by dropping and repositioning the yarn over stitch. This one, I legitimately just forgot to make the yarn over when I was knitting across. So this one, I'm not going to be able to fix by just dropping down and moving anything because there's nothing to move. So we will have to pull back to that point, and I'll show you how to fix that kind of situation. But we'll start with dropping down to fix a missed yarn over. Okay, so we need to get over to the mistake. Right now I'm at, I just slipped a stitch, and now I'm going to knit two together. And one more to go, so slip. And now my mistake is in this following row. So you can see where I have to fix this yarn over here. Right here. So this next associated stitch is what I'm going to knit together with the yarn over, and when I'm going to drop the stitches, I'm only going to drop the knit stitches, and I'm going to not want to mess with the yarn overs associated with those. So so I don't lose this yarn over that's associated with this next stitch, I'm just going to slip it to my right hand needle just so I don't lose it. And then I'm going to be able to pop those stitches. So again, I'm only going to pop the stitches in front, and I'm going to leave the yarn overs where they are so that I can more easily fix it. So I'm just going to slide the needle through on my right hand needle so that it's out of the way. And then I'm going to concentrate on these stitches here. So to go down, I'm going to pop the first stitch off. And then you can see that its yarn over is right here, right behind it. So I'm going to pop just this knit stitch off this knit stitch while leaving this yarn over here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it off. So then I have this knit stitch loose, and this yarn over is right here behind it. So I'll hold that up. And I have this one. Again, here's the knit stitch, and it's yarn over. I want to leave the yarn over there, but I want to pop this off of the knit stitch. Alright, so I have the first knit stitch with its yarn over. Hold that up. The second knit stitch with its yarn over. And now I'm at the part where there's a mistake, because you can see that this knit stitch doesn't have its yarn over behind it. This is not the yarn over, this is the knit stitch that I would be popping off the next one. See? You can see it's just the knit stitch of the next row. So this is where I need to fix that mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and move the yarn over behind, and now it looks like the other ones, where I've got a knit stitch and a yarn over, and a knit stitch and a yarn over, and a knit stitch and a yarn over. Okay, so to fix it, now because I only messed with the knit part and I left the yarn overs, I get to fix it just like I would fix it regularly. So you take your crochet hook and you pull up the knit stitch, grab the next one, pull up the knit stitch, and then you place it back on the needle. And there you go. It's completely fixed. So there's no more hole there, and that yarn over is placed back with its proper stitch. So now I can continue on my way. Okay, so I've fixed that stitch, and now I'm ready to continue along, but I have to remember that I slipped that yarn over to my right hand needle. So I'm going to replace that before I continue. And so to double check, to read your knitting, you'll look and you have already slipped the stitch with the yarn in front, and then you're at the point where you're going to knit two together. And I knit two together. Okay, next we'll fix that other mistake down there. Here I realized just a row back I missed yarn over also, just like that other mistake I made. So in this case I would probably just tink back and redo it. So I'll show you quickly how to tink back in Brioche so that you can make sure you've got all your stitches. So this previous stitch here was a slipped stitch with the yarn in front. You can tell because the yarn is just hanging out in front there. See, I can just move it. It's not through that loop at all. So I'm going to just slip it back. And then here, you could tell that you need to make sure you have your knit stitch and your yarn over together. go ahead and enter through the front, pull off, and then you've got the yarn over with the knit stitch. And then we're going to have a slipped stitch next. So we're just going to slip it back. The knit two together with knit and yarn over. So I have both of those. Slip. Our knit two together again. So we're going to go in through the front. Here. Slip. And we have a knit and a yarn over. Okay, just continue across. Okay, so here I have that mistake I can't fix because I don't have the associated yarn over to move. So I'm gonna have to drop back. I forgot the yarn over entirely in that spot. So I'm gonna show you how to pull the stitches out. Again, if you want to put a lifeline or if you want to put the stitches on a holder somehow that you don't pull back. If you're not using a slippery yarn, if you're using wool, you probably will be fine. The stitches will hold together well enough. Like I'm gonna have to actually physically kind of pull them to get them to where I want them to go. Okay, so even though it's scary, you just pull out the needle. And then your stitches will kind of fray apart like that because you've got a series of knits and purls. If you look at it, you can see where the yarn overs hang out behind, like we were speaking about before. But I'm going to go ahead and just start pulling it out, ripping it back until I get to the point where I made the mistake. Again, you probably only want to do this if it's like if it's unfixable by dropping and if it's way back. So mine was way back. Otherwise I would have tinked back to fix it. Alright, so here is my mistake. You can see it. My mistake's right here. And you can see that it doesn't have the yarn over in front of it. See, this stitch has a yarn over right here. This one doesn't have it. This one has the yarn over right here. So I'm going to pull back one more row. When you get to the row that you're going to want to fix, you want to be a little bit gentle pulling out your stitches so you don't interrupt the way they're sitting. So to pick up, you look at what kind of stitch is next. So we have this row, column of knits. So with the knit stitch is going to be associated the yarn over. So we're going to look to find the yarn over and the knit stitch for that row. So I'm going to pick up the yarn over right here and the knit stitch. For this, the next row, the next column, it's purls, so all I need to do is pick up one stitch, purl. The next is the knit column, so I'm going to look for yarn over and a knit stitch. So I have both of those. The next is a purl, I just need one stitch. The next is a knit, so I'm going to grab the yarn over and the knit stitch. Next one is a purl, just one. Try to move it closer now. So this is a knit column. So here's my knit stitch, and then right behind it is my yarn over. Next is a purl. We only have one stitch to pick up. Knit, so yarn over is right here. Knit stitch, purl bump, yarn over, knit stitch, purl bump. If you care which way your stitches are seated when you're picking up, you'll pick up from back to front. But at a point where you're ripping back, I like to just get the stitches on the needle and I can reassociate them when I'm knitting again. It's completely up to you. Here again we have a knit column, so we're gonna get the yarn over first and the knit stitch, purl, there's only one to pick up, yarn over, knit, purl, yarn over, knit, purl, yarn over, knit, purl, yarn over, knit, purl, yarn over, knit. So there you have it. I've picked it all back up and you can see it looks pretty much like it does when you've got it on your needle. So you've got a purl bump, and then a yarn over, and a knit stitch, and a purl bump, and a yarn over, and a knit stitch. And that's how you can check yourself too, is you want to look and make sure you've got a purl stitch and then your little X that you have for your knit and your yarn over. Purl, yarn over, knit, purl, yarn over, knit. In worst case, if you don't have that, you can kind of pull it off and see if you can pick it back up. If not, take back one or pull back one more row and try to pick up again. It's not the end of the world. I would hate to see you have to frog an entire piece just because of a mistake. I would keep ripping back one more row and just see if you could pick them up. That's fixing mistakes in single color brioche.